Hello, my name is Maria Crystene. I'm the host of the Awaken podcast, awakening to your path, your purpose, and staying on mission for your life journey. I am so excited. So I'm recording part two of this three-part series of what it means to really live from your purpose, on purpose, intentionally, day after day after day. Because here's the thing that nobody really tells you, or at least I didn't realize it, especially because I grew up watching parents and watching a lot of other adults and grown-ups in the small rural community that I was in. And I think this was just also normal for the time, was you saw people pick a job. Like, I'm going to be a janitor, I'm going to be a teacher, I'm going to be a nurse. My dad was in road construction, banker, whatever it was. And it's like, okay, that must be my purpose. And that's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I'm going to do it for the next like 35, 40 years. So it almost seemed as if, and there was a lot of pressure, right? So I grew up in the 90s and graduated in 2008. Around that time, there was a lot of pressure of like, you got to get it right. Like, whatever your purpose is, whatever your thing is, you better get it right. Because you kind of saw a lot of people around you where I grew up, where whatever it was, that's what they did for the next 35 years. So subconsciously, you're like, okay, I gotta get this career choice right. And it felt like it'd be a failure if you chose something and then you ended up having to pivot. That was at least, again, my story and what I had seen growing up. So there was this pressure of I better get it right. And secondly, like this is the thing then that I'm like stuck in for life, especially if you pay over 50K for a degree, right? So for those of us who like our parents wanted better for us, and so you went for schooling after schooling after schooling after schooling to achieve the highest degree that you could. And so for me and my career that I had chosen was occupational therapy. And at the time, the highest degree for that was a master's degree. And so, yeah, you finish all that schooling and you come out with a nice hefty bill, your student loans that you have to pay back. And you're like, okay, this better work. And in episode one, I shared about how the thing that I thought was my purpose and my distorted view that I thought purpose, like I knew I wanted to help people. And so I thought that that had to look a certain way. And my world was rocked when I realized, and I talk about this in the part one of this series, so just go back one episode, of how I landed my dream job at Mayo Clinic, the number one hospital in the world, as an occupational therapist. And I was internally devastated after a year and then 15 months and 16 months. And I just knew that I couldn't stay there. I knew that that wasn't for me. And so I left. And that's where I left you with, is that I left. I theoretically at the time, it felt like I had walked away from my purpose because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. Therefore, I felt really lost afterwards. Like I do describe, I mention how when I handed in my resignation, I felt lighter. I felt free. I felt like the cuffs were coming off of like what I thought I was going to be. So like yes, there was that, but also like true story, the duality of it was I was like, now what? And obviously, I was not ready to take a full leap at the time to entrepreneurship. I really had no idea what entrepreneurship looked like. I did not think I was on an entrepreneurship track. So I just took another occupational therapy job. I just found another occupational therapy job in a different setting. I want to say that I took a job at a local skilled nursing rehab. So it was more rehab based. Once someone leaves the hospital, then you do rehab with them, occupational therapy, physical therapy, etc. And so I thought that this was maybe going to be a better fit because I could actually like make connections with people because oftentimes they're in rehab for 2, 3, 4 weeks, sometimes even months, depending on what they're there for. So, that was my initial leap. I was like, okay, I just need to like find a different setting. And this is where purpose is interesting because I will say, you know, whatever your purpose is, and as you continue to get closer to like determining what your purpose is, and also you begin to let go of what that has to look like, knowing that your purpose is this internal compass. It's oftentimes, and I describe it how it's for me, but I do realize now that I know a little bit more about my human design and as a generator and how I have to attune to everything through like a sacral response, like what is my gut instinct, and knowing that other types, depending on what your human design type is. Maybe you listen to that differently, your own inner wisdom. But for me, I knew, I knew deep down, as long as I follow that feeling in my gut, that feeling of this intuition of like, go towards what lights you up, even if it's scary, even if it doesn't make sense. Like, I began to realize that that was me following my purpose. I began to realize that following my purpose was not doing what was expected of me, was not doing what I thought I was supposed to follow some kind of like normie traditional path. I thought that's what purpose was. And again, began to have to like really listen in to like what actually lights me up. Now, again, this was not I didn't have that epiphany for a while. I didn't have the tools. So from 2017 that I left Mayo Clinic all the way until 2021. What is that? 4 years? I was still on this journey. I did two different OT jobs during that time period. The one I really thought that that was it. It allowed me, I was working at an outpatient clinic. I was building out the OT program. Like I realized I love to lead, I love to build, I love to create, I love to do it. Again, later on, realized I'm a generator in human design. I'm like, oh, this is making sense. I love to do, I love to create. And so I thought, like, this is it. But through a myriad of different circumstances that was happening, like the universe was ultimately saying, like, no, 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 this is not where you land. This is where, yes, I'm like acquiring some skills that I was going to need for entrepreneurship and for like managing and working with a team. And again, at the time when I took this position that was then going to build these skills within me, I still did not. Well, I can't say that. I was going to say I still did not think I was going to be an entrepreneur. I take that back. I think I did. Part of me did. There was still a lot of parts of me that were like, no, 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 you're not going to do that. A little bit of a side note. I thought I knew I needed something kind of entrepreneurial, something that was my own that I wasn't getting in my 9 to 5 at the time. So I think around 2016, 2017, 2018, I honestly think this was also part of that time where I was like really anxious, depressed, working at Mayo, having just left Mayo, trying to find what lit me up, thought maybe like a side hustle. So I actually sold Mary Kay makeup for a little bit and it was atrocious. It was atrocious. I should not be selling makeup. I barely wear any makeup. But we go to what's familiar, or at least I did. And so my mom loved Mary Kay makeup growing up and we loved going to the Mary Kay lady who lived next door. We actually had three Mary Kay ladies who lived in our town, but here nor there. And we enjoyed going to these parties and it was fun. You could meet people and then like people, a lot of these women at the parties obviously naturally wore makeup and so it's just such an easy sell. So I was like, that sounds fun. And I did that for like a hot second, like 6 months. It was great. I made some awesome connections, but I knew I was like, I'm not supposed to be selling makeup. So ultimately, at a point when I thought maybe I had landed in a 9 to 5 where I was getting to run and lead an OT department, a small OT department of pediatric and adult OTs, and it was so fun, so creative, so many different aspects of my, of my own inner fire was being, I don't know, nurtured, but it wasn't the right environment for me. There was a lot of inner dynamics going on. And ultimately, I kept knowing, I have to, like, this is not going to be forever. And that's when I probably really started thinking, like, and laying the groundwork of, like, okay, what if I open my own? At the time, still, I was thinking OT coaching practice. How could I continue to help people? By that time, by 2019, 2020, 2021, COVID happened. So many things were going on, but I began to realize what I really loved doing with people. And because occupational therapy, if you're listening to this, you may only think of OTs as like, oh, they helped my grandma after she had a stroke, or OTs who help children, kids in school with handwriting or sensory things. OT is such a broad profession. So again, I trust everything I went through was always leading me to where I am now. But OT also has a deep, rich background in mental health. And OT is helping individuals, honestly, back in the, oh, I might get the dates wrong, like I think men from the 30s coming back from the war, helping them with their mental health and kind of returning to leisure and activity. So I would call that like focusing on their mental emotional health. OT has a rich history in that. And that's the element I really loved. And especially during COVID, when a lot of our typical clients weren't going out, what we were seeing was a lot of high stress, high anxious individuals, high achievers, leaders who were having nervous breakdowns. And ultimately, they were coming in at the time I was trained in using a tool called Heart Math Biofeedback. And it was really cool because, of course, also these tools that I was learning to help my clients, I was also beginning to use. So simultaneously, while I was trying to figure out my life professionally, I was beginning to do some more self-awareness, like taking an Enneagram test, taking a personality test, exploring things like Reiki. I did my first shamanic healing with someone in 2020, 2021, like just starting all this stuff, trying to find myself, trying to figure out what am I meant to do in the world. And so this heart math biofeedback tool that I was using with clients, I also had to use it on myself during one of the most stressful times during COVID, when both my husband and I were actually put on paid, like what was it? Like unemployment because we weren't working. It was the weirdest time. And highly anxious, highly stressed. I'm a go-go-goer, typically not used to like being in my feels, being in like my stress. So I started learning the tools. And then the tools I started teaching my clients. And I'm like, I love this. So ultimately, the environment that I was in was not for me. And so it came where another pivotal point, and this is where what I mean is living in your purpose is not always easy. It's sometimes messy. Sometimes it's very obvious. Sometimes it's a leap of like excitement and yes. And other times it's like duality. You're excited and you're also like having a total oh shit moment of like, what am I doing? And so, and also, it's like it's something that you have to keep listening to, and you have to keep choosing your purpose day in and day out, no matter what. And when I say no matter what, that sounds easy, but like you have tools for like dealing with the ish that comes up when you're about to make another leap towards your purpose. And so that happened to me in 2021. It was right around my birthday. So what? I would have been 31 that year. And I decided. I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. I have to leave this place. It's slowly killing my soul. And I leapt into, at the time, it was also like working part-time somewhere still and starting my business. And at the time, it was just going to be like an kind of like an OT outpatient practice plus coaching leaders, professionals in managing their stress, managing their anxiety, something that I could do very well, that I had learned how to do very well in practice. And also learned for myself. So that was it. That was me making another leap. And yeah, I would like to say I made that choice purely from like inner knowing. And absolutely there was that. But in full transparency, if the universe had not made my current work environment as uncomfortable as it was, plus COVID kind of showed me what it was like to work from home with more flexibility in my schedule. We had actually gone to doing more telehealth with clients. And honestly, in telehealth, because we weren't using a lot of like the physical modalities that I would have used in OT. So I got to actually shift more into using these emotional regulation tools that I could teach my clients that I could do right across the screen and realized how much I loved it. Loved how much I could just wake up, grab my coffee, pop downstairs, see some client, like all of that. So it was that, but then also just the discomfort of where I was, the work environment was really the biggest. motivator to leap. And I really do think that had that environment been like a little more cohesive, I think I definitely it would have been so easy to keep putting off like starting my own business. Maybe I never would have. Or I think I was like, yeah, maybe like literally I would have said 2025. By 2025, which was literally like last year at the time of this recording, by 2025 I'll start my business. But no, I needed to get out. And so 2021 made another leap completely, well, not completely again. I was doing some part-time employment, but left full-time salary and benefits. And for an occupational therapist who's been practicing at that time, it was for 14, 7 years. That was a that was a nice paycheck. That was great benefits. I mean, decent benefits. It wasn't like Mayo Clinic level benefits. Mayo Clinic benefits for healthcare workers is excellent. But thankfully, someone who I haven't mentioned really in my story is my husband. And none of this would have been possible without him because I like he had to be on board. Of course, I am the master of my life. I was always he would always let me make my own decision, of course. It was always in my bucket, but I wanted him to be on board and I knew what that meant to walk away from being the breadwinner. I that was just how it was. He was in an IT job at the time, but not in upper management, not like he had started as an IT tech in this company. And at the time, I think he had maybe assumed into a team lead role, but it was still at the time like my salary was still our main salary. And he could have said, well, he maybe did say, "Are you sure?" I he could have said no. He still would have known I would have done whatever I wanted, but obviously it would have weighed on me had he not been fully supportive. But he knew how unhappy I was at the current place, and so he was supportive, and I left and I walked away. And again, at the time, it was holding the duality of like a part of me was really excited for what I was going to get to build and create in this like new adventure. Like, of course, I was thinking of like the fun stuff, like, oh, I get to build a website, I get to create a logo. And again, at the time, it was going to be more of like a outpatient occupational therapy practice slash coaching business. So it started out with a different name and everything. And I was excited about that, but also very much having doubts and oh my gosh, what am I doing? But deep, 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 deep down, I knew that it was part of my purpose and part of my path. And that's just another point as I share this story. Like this is the deepest dive that I've gone into in this story. I have shared like kind of parts of my origin story in other episodes. You can like go all the way back to like episode 2 and find a version of this. This is probably the deepest dive I've done. And in this moment, it's another, I just want to like really point out that when you are making moves, walking in your purpose, you need to be able to expect and be able to hold this duality of, oh shit, what am I doing? This is insane. Can I do this? As well as hold the excitement and show up for all of it. And it's why people also can think, and again, I think this is because it can be our upbringing, right? So like if I would have stayed on the traditional, I just call it the normie path. There's nothing wrong with that. I just didn't belong in the traditional normie path of getting a 9 to 5 job and staying there for the next 25 years and just climbing the career ladder, which honestly seemed boring to me. I'm like, boring for me, not for me. Might be for you. That's lovely, not for me. I could, if I would have stayed over there, things feel very like when you're in a traditional normie job, oftentimes there's a very clear set pathway, a career ladder for how your career is going to unfold, I feel like you kind of do get like the 90 steps. You do see like how other senior leadership in your department, wherever you are, you kind of see like, oh, okay, so they did this, then did that, then they took on this level of responsibility, then they took on this lead role, then this, oh, and then they ultimately became the director. Like it feels like the path is kind of set. And so if you wanted to take that path, you're like, you know what you're getting into step by step. And that's the difference when you begin to follow purpose that may begin to veer off of the traditional normie path. And you begin to realize that you want to be a founder, you want to create something, you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to go in and own something and build something. It does not have the same preset as a normie path. And so your brain will keep wondering, well, where's my 90 steps? And your brain will want that. It's going to want that assuredness. It's really how our brain secures internal safety if we haven't figured out how to secure internal safety otherwise. And so that's why living in your purpose, especially if you're a creator, founder, entrepreneur, owner, something, CEO, it means sometimes, most of the time, you don't know the next 90 steps. You just know the next step. And then from there, you reassess and you figure out the next step and the next step. And yes, many of us who are in these roles would describe ourselves as visionaries. Like you can see the vision in your heart, in your mind, in your imagination, however you want to call it. You can see the full vision, which is helpful. But then again, to be honest, sometimes not helpful for our brains because it's like, okay, I'm here. I see the bigger vision. Again, you wish you had the exact next 90 to 290 steps to get there, but you don't. All you see is you, the big vision, and then maybe just the next step or two or three. And you just have to keep trusting and choosing your purpose day in and day out and being willing to listen to your intuition and have tools that I cannot stress this enough. You must have tools to deal with the mind chatter, to deal with the doubt, to deal with the feeling of fear and overwhelm. You must have tools. Otherwise, you will burn out fast. You will get overwhelmed fast. You might quit. That's okay. Maybe that's part of your journey. But you need to have tools. So 2021 was another leaping point where I chose purpose over what made sense. And I left full-time salary altogether, fully started a business, still worked part-time. And in episode 3, I'm going to come back and I'm going to share a little bit more now about like what this looks like now in the day-to-day. There has been so much that's happened from 2021 to as I record this, March 2026. I can't even believe it's been 4 years, 5 years, 5 years. And honestly, same thing holds true. I have to intentionally choose my purpose every day. I have to ask, is this it? Is this lighting me up? Is this driving my bigger mission forward? Even if it's a little uncomfortable right now. Also, as you begin to grow and scale your business or whatever it is you're creating, other factors start coming in. Like, do I trust people to help me in this mission and vision? Do I really trust them? And do I trust myself and them enough to delegate and let some things go? That's hard. Um, it also includes like literally if you are an entrepreneur, a founder, a CEO, an owner of something, I can't stress, as I mentioned, the inner work. The do I know how to listen to my own intuition and inner wisdom? Do I have tools to deal with the mind chatter and the feelings of stress and overwhelm that will come? Do I have tools, what I learned later on in my journey, to literally reprogram your subconscious mind? Something I had never heard of before 2023. Okay. Something I had never heard of before 2023. And now I am trained in using different subconscious modalities. And I do this with my clients, my one-on-one clients. I also infuse subconscious healing in a lot of my different programs because it is so key. That's a whole nother episode. I actually have an episode of all about the subconscious mind and why this is so important when you're building something, growing something, creating something, fostering something. Because again, at the end of the day, more often than not, you are the bottleneck. You are the sticking point. But that's a good thing because you can control you. You can upgrade your subconscious mind. You can manage your stress. You can have tools to work with the doubt and fear so that you can keep progressing your mission forward, following your life purpose. So, those tools are key, non-negotiable. Can't get past them. I'm going to dive a little bit more into that into episode 3, the part 3 of this series, I should say, not episode 3, as well as, again, how can you begin to live from your purpose on purpose intentionally, and also notice what's getting in the way of that. Why are you not? Partially, like you're human. You're human. It wasn't going to be easy. But guess what? It also doesn't have to be super hard. I hate to say it. Sometimes your subconscious mind is wired to make things more difficult than it needs to be. And guess what? You can change that. You can change that. And then I'll share a little bit more about just that leap from 2021 and how I had to keep choosing my purpose on purpose day in and day out and how I landed here right now with you. So come back for part 3 if you've found this series, if you're finding this series helpful. I love to hear from you. So if you're getting this podcast because I send it to you via email, hit reply, share what have been some of your ahas, insights, or takeaways. Follow me on Instagram at I am Maria Crystene. I'll have it down in the show notes, but send me a message. I'd love to hear, how is this landing for you? How do you resonate? How do you not? Um, what are you feeling? How are you living in your purpose? And I'm excited. I'm preparing just some different like freebies, some things to support you. And that'll be up on the website, higherselfawakening.com/freebies soon. So be sure to check that. And when I have them ready, I'll also be putting them in the show notes. So have an amazing day. I'll see you on the next episode.